This needs to be the winner where the Atlanta Braves spend significant money. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, December 2nd. Your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_Today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all my written work, BravesToday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today to get started. I'm vacillating between optimistic and pessimistic about 2026. Because on the one hand, Atlanta's struggles in the last 2 years can be pretty explicitly connected to injuries. And I'm not saying that's the only problem with the Braves. Please don't get me wrong here. But when you look at Atlanta's situation, and you look at the way things happened in the last 2 seasons, okay? 2024, the Braves lost their opening day starter in Spencer Strider, and both Ronald Acuna Jr. and Austin Riley to season-ending injuries, right? OptaStats had that stat that was going around. Braves were the first team in MLB history to make the postseason after losing 3 opening day starters for the final 35-plus games plus the playoffs. And that's kind of understating things. Atlanta's opening day lineup was together for a grand total of 6 innings in 2024. Sean Murphy left in the 7th inning of the opener with the oblique strain, wouldn't come back until Ronald was on the injured list, gone for the year with the torn ACL, and all that stuff. And down the stretch, you were starting 3 different DFA'd players on defense. You had Gio Urshela at third, you had Whit Merrifield at second, you had Ramon Laureano in left. All 3 guys had been DFA'd by their previous clubs. But the Braves sneaked into the playoffs on the final day of the year because 2 reasons. 1, Marcell Ozuna hit .302 with 39 homers and over 100 RBI and was a runner-up, I think it was 3rd place or 4th place finisher for MVP. And the pitching staff by ERA was tied with the Mariners for best pitching staff in baseball at 3.49. 3rd in starters ERA, 3rd in reliever ERA. That's why you made the postseason. And then in 25, you didn't have either of those things. Marcell Ozuna hit just .232, the hip injury, he's a free agent. And your opening day rotation, all 5 members were on the 60-day list at the same time. And you missed the postseason. And so the thing where I struggle here is when you look at all of the different ways the Braves have been successful in the last 5 seasons, it's hard to see any of those directly applying to what the Braves are doing now and for 2026, right? 2021, okay? After the trade deadline, Atlanta had one of the best scoring offenses in baseball. They added 4 outfielders, remember? They added Jock, they added Soler, they added Duvall, Rosario, they added a bunch of dudes. They scored over 5 runs a game, had a league-leading .655 winning percentage after the deadline, and went from 5 games back to 6.5 games up in the division, made the postseason, and then ran through the National League en route to winning the World Series. 2022, you had Max Fried as runner-up for Cy Young. Kyle Wright led baseball in wins with 21 and was 4th place in Cy Young. And Spencer Strider broke out and was the runner-up for Rookie of the Year, combined with Austin Riley, being a 6th place finisher for MVP, Dansby Swanson being a 12th place finisher for MVP, and Michael Harris being 13th place finisher for MVP and Rookie of the Year. 2023, greatest offense in modern baseball history. Tied the single season homer record, first team to ever finish with a team slugging percentage over 500 at 501. Like, different paths to making the postseason. It's hard to see any of those repeating in 2026 because you have questions everywhere. The 2023 offense is not coming back. We have seen that by now. That record-setting offense was nowhere to be found in 24 and in 25. And it increasingly looks like 24 wasn't the fluke, 23 was the fluke, right? You could see a scenario where they're powered by some MVP finalists in the lineup and some Cy Young finalists in the rotation, right? You could see Ronald Acuna Jr. and Matt Olson and someone as a third MVP finisher in the lineup, combining with Chris Sale and Spencer Schwellenbach, or maybe Spencer Strider, as your three horsemen in the rotation that all have Cy Young finishes. But the pitchers were all injured last year. And who's that third hitter? Is it Austin Riley? Is he back? His WRC plus has dropped in 3 straight years. You're in this really tough scenario of it's hard to see a way forward. It's hard to see exactly what the plan is for 2026. And a lot of the projection systems that are starting to come out, and yes, it's early. The winter meetings aren't for another week, although I will point out that despite the winter meetings not starting for another week, 9 of the top 50 free agents, this is the MLB trade rumors list, top 50 free agents, 9 of those guys are already off the board. I talked about Dylan Cease yesterday. We know there was 4 qualifying offer guys. We've seen a couple relievers, Raisel Iglesias, Ryan Helsley. We saw last night, Devin Williams goes 3 for 50 with the Mets. There's talk they could still re-sign Edwin Diaz as of time of recording. They could just have both those guys back there. We don't know. But the market's moving surprisingly quickly for this early in free agency. And the projection systems aren't necessarily super high on the Braves. Zips is one of my favorite projection systems. It's housed over at Fangraphs. And Dan Zimborski, he's going to kill me when he finds out I said his name wrong, runs Zips, has run it for like 20-something years. I want to say he first rolled it out in like 2005. So it's been around for a long time. And the goal of it, they use historical, multiple seasons of production combined with similarity scores, finding the players that you're closest to based on age, based on production and all of that, seeing how those players aged to see how you will age and all of that to project out a bunch of possible outcomes for you, right? Do a ton of simulations. What is the median, the 50th percentile outcome? What is 10th percent? What is 90th percent? And kind of go from there. Like, when you look at the similarity scores to Cal Raleigh, you see like Johnny Bench from 72 to 75 is on the list. Brian McCann from 2008 to 2011 is on the list. Like, just finding guys who were similar and then using that to extrapolate out what's going to happen. And I gotta tell you, Zips does not like the Braves. Like last year, the Braves, they were coming off an 89-win team that made the postseason, and they had, I think, the second best odds in Zips to make the World Series when you convert all of the data into runs and everything. It's an individual player projection system, right? So it's not necessarily projecting final records, but we can use baseball's Pythagorean expectation, right? Runs scored versus runs allowed to figure out a record. Zips has Atlanta as like an 84 to 88 win team this year, 2026. And that's not great. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like if you think about how it's coming up with these, it's using multiple years of projection. A lot of these Braves players either have missed a bunch of time or saw their production drop year over year, right? Austin Riley, his WRC plus has dropped in like 3 straight years. Ronald Acuna Jr. missed a ton of time, right? Sean Murphy both played bad and missed a ton of time. So it has the Braves not doing really well, not being that great. Better than last year, right? It was a losing record last year. An 88 win team does have a winning record, right? 81 and 81 is 500. So 88 win team is 7 games over 500. That's better than how you finished last year, but it's not very exciting. And it made me start to wonder, what is the proper off-season direction for the Braves? We'll discuss that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Quick shout out to our Braves Today sponsor, FanDuel. Falcons are favored by are under 7.5 point underdogs at home versus the Seahawks. On Sunday, despite the fact that the Seahawks will play at like 10 o'clock, their internal clocks, because they're coming to the West. I never understood why West Coast teams had to fly east and play day games. I hate that in baseball too. Like, you'll see the Braves fly out to the West Coast and they play at 10 p.m. Atlanta time. But then you'll see something where there'll be like the Athletics or the Dodgers, or not, Dodgers always get Sunday Night Baseball, but like the Athletics will be in Boston and they'll start the game at noon Eastern, or like it's the marathon day game and it's like 11 a.m. and it's like it's 8 a.m. in their heads. What are you doing? Anyway, go to FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app if you want to get started on fading Atlanta sports like I've been for a little while now. The way that I see this offseason, you've got 2 directions, right? You can be aggressive and push a bunch of chips in towards a playoff push now, or you can kind of hold the course and do what you've been doing. Let's talk about pushing the chips in, okay? Because we know from a financial perspective that Atlanta reset the CBT last year. So the penalties have now reset for going over the CBT. It's now back down to a 20% tax. A reminder, when you go over the CBT threshold in multiple years, the penalty you pay is higher every single season. The first year, it's a 20% tax on all overages. Only the money you went over. If you go over by $5 million, your tax you pay is $1 million. The second consecutive year, it goes from a 20% tax on your overage to 30%. And then the third year, it goes to 50%. But if you dip under for 1 year, which if the numbers aren't finalized, but we all believe and understand the Braves to have stayed underneath it in 2025, it drops back to 20%. So now you can go over it, and it's not escalating penalties to do so. So we know the Braves reset the CBT. We know, based on, me doing the newsletters and the pods about the earnings, that the Braves made money in both quarter 2 and quarter 3. And this is made money as compared to the similar quarter the previous year, despite attendance being down. And because of that, Terry McGurk said his goal was to be a top 5 payroll team. Again, every time I bring this up, I clarify this. He did not say in 2026. I've heard a lot of people who were not on the call have mischaracterized what he said as McGurk committing to a top 5 payroll in 2026. He did not say that. He did not say 2026. He did not say next season. He did not put a specific time frame on it. He said the top 5, quote, is a place I want to get to And I think we're capable of doing that. It sounds like I'm making excuses for them. I'm not. I'm just trying to make sure we all understand what he actually said. But we expect that to happen as soon as this winter. We had a conversation in the Braves Today Discord on Monday. And if you want to join that, completely free, links in the episode description, links in the show notes, about championship windows. Okay? And the argument was made, and it was a good argument, and convinced some people, that the Braves are almost in it's like a virtually windowless stretch of permanent contention. Because they have Matt Olson, because they have Austin Riley, because they have Spencer Strider. Ronald Acuna Jr. is here for at least the next 3 years. Drake Baldwin and Schwellenbach are 5 years of control, right? That it's almost a windowless stretch of contention. Every single year, you should be in contention. But the issue with that is that's assuming a perfect scenario. And as we've seen in the last couple of years, Atlanta has not had that perfect scenario. If you want a list of every Braves starter in either the rotation or the lineup who did not miss time to injury or suspension in the last 2 years, your options, here is the list of either hitters or pitchers that did not miss time to injury or suspension in the last 2 years. Matt Olson, Bryce Elder, end of list. That's it. That's all you got. Everybody else, every defensive position, you've had to play somebody else because of injury or a suspension to Jurickson Profar. In the rotation, you've missed just about everybody except for Bryce Elder, some point in time in the last 2 seasons. And even when those guys have been on the field, I mentioned it earlier, they haven't been awesome. Austin Riley, yes, the last 2 seasons, it's a 111 OPS. That's not bad. The Braves aren't paying him to be 11% better than average. They're paying the 2021 to 2023 Austin Riley, who was 30 to 40% better than average. Right? Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris. A lot of this has been bad. And so what Atlanta arguably needs to do is to spend some of that dry powder that Terry McGurk likes to talk about. And they need to accumulate as much depth as possible and as much talent as possible. I talked about it a little bit yesterday, talked about it a little bit last week about scouting for guys that have really good stuff. I was talking about pitchers specifically because I'm an amateur pitching nerd, but scouting for guys that maybe weren't as accomplished as some of the big names, like a Devin Williams, who got 3 years and $50 million from the Mets. But scouting for guys with really good stuff that you could add to the organization and figure out where best to deploy them later. And I think, assuming you add somebody to the rotation, and it's obviously not going to be Dylan Cease, I don't expect him to pop a qualifying offer on a Michael King or a Framber Valdez or anybody. But it's probably going to be a veteran, like a Chris Bassett, somebody you can pencil in for 30 starts or something like that. And, maybe it's a Merrill Kelly or Lucas Giolito or something. Somebody who you can plan on being your 4th or 5th starter all season. And then you've got guys like Grant Holmes, who talks about his 2024 season where he was a utility pitcher for Atlanta. He started some, he worked single innings of relief, he worked multiple innings of relief, and he was just ultimately a dog for you. He was great. You have guys like that who can fill multiple roles, and you figure out what to do with them later. Just saying, I've said this a lot. I don't know if I said it a lot on this pod, but I've said it a lot in the past. Depth will always work itself out. I have zero issue with having one too many guys because it will fix itself. A pitcher will get hurt. A hitter will foul a ball off his foot or something. Looking at you, Ozzy. Somebody will miss time. The depth will figure itself out. And so use this money. Go get a starter. Go get Ha-Sung Kim to play shortstop. Yes, he's projected in Zips to have a 95 OPS. Yes, that is technically slightly below average. Mauricio Dubon had a 78 last year. Nick Allen had a 53 last year. Getting Ha-Sung Kim to plug in at shortstop gives you the ability, one, to raise the floor of the everyday lineup. He did indicate he wants to steal more in 26. That's always been part of his game. This is what he told that Korean language newspaper when he landed in Korea after the season, that he feels like stealing bases is part of his game. He wasn't really able to do it this last year, and especially did not really try it in Atlanta because he was prioritizing staying healthy. In 24, he stole 22 bags. In 23, he stole 38 bags. So you get Ha-Sung Kim back. He's close to a league average hitter. He gives you the ability he can throw in 25 stolen bases. Maybe under Antoine Richardson, it's more. Again, he had 38 stolen bases in 2023. Maybe he's a 40 steal guy. Maybe he's a 20-40 guy. Who knows? You do that, that gives you the ability to deploy Mauricio Dubon as the highest quality backup anywhere on the field. He can play literally any position but catcher, and he's done it at an above average level. So not only have you've raised the floor of the offense, you fixed the first injury that happens by not sacrificing defense to stick somebody else in there. You can add an outfielder. You can add a bat out there, either somebody who you think is starting caliber, and you can force Jurickson Profar and Ronald Acuna Jr. into DH days. Improve the outfield defense and give you another bat in the lineup, lengthen your lineup, or just get a rotational or platoon bat, somebody that can hit righties. Sean Murphy had a 127 OPS plus against lefties last year, despite being awful. His overall stats were terrible last year. He still had a 127 OPS plus against lefties. So you combine a righty hitter with a lefty hitter in Murphy, you now have a very good rotational or DH platoon. You can still get Drake Baldwin a bunch of at-bats. But all of these things are fixable with money. And we know the Braves have money. We've talked about it. They've talked about it. They have money. Spend it. Go for it while you have Ronald Acuna Jr. healthy, while you have Matt Olson, while you have Austin Riley, while you have Chris Sale, who is technically going to be a free agent after this year unless you sign up to an extension this winter. Go for it. Spend the money so you can increase your chances of winning the whole thing this year, because we don't know what the baseball landscape is going to look like after the next CBT is in place. We don't know if Chris Sale is going to come back. We don't know if Ronald's going to stay healthy. Go for it. Push the chips in. Go for it this year. There's another argument that is more along the lines of what you've been doing has gotten you better results than some of your peers who have been pushing in the chips. And so stay the course. We'll break that argument down next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards, custom card manufacturer, brand new UI and everything on the website. Love this. You upload your source photos. U Sports makes the most sense, but it can be anything, right? Winners and losers of your fantasy football league, whatever it might be. You upload your source photos. You use their brand new designer. You choose your background. You pick your holographic options, the text on your card and where it goes, front and back, everything. The site shows you a proof of what your card's going to look like. If you need help, white glove service from their customer service department. Once you finalize a design, they print the card on high quality cardstock, they slab it, and they ship it right to you in this really convenient plastic case that has a built-in stand. You choose your colors on the case. You choose the hologram on the card. All of that fun stuff makes a great gift. Is great. Kids love these things. ncasecards.com, ncasccards.com. Promo code BRAVES today gets you 20% off. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a QR code in the bottom right of the screen. I swear I don't know the directions right now. ncasecards.com, ncasccards.com. Promo code BRAVES today. Final segment of Braves today, Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk about the flip side, right? We talked about going all in, spending the money to fill all of the holes and overstocking the roster, right? You're already going to go into spring training with 6 or 7 guys who could be starters for you. Why not add one more? Because you're going to lose somebody. So just why not one more, right? The flip side of this argument is like maintaining the course because what you've done has been more successful than a lot of these teams that have gone all in. And let's be clear, I don't mean what you did as in last winter, where you didn't sign anybody for multiple years until you grabbed Profar in late January, and you just added a bunch of minor league deals for either hitters like Brian De La Cruz or bullpen pitchers, and none of it worked out. I don't mean that. The 2021 through 2025 plan here of either developing young pieces. I'm thinking about a Spencer Strider. I'm thinking about a Michael Harris, Spencer Schwellenbach, AJ Smith-Shawver, Drake Baldwin, or trading for and then extending hitters. Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, right? They traded and extended or brought back or whatever Eddie Rosario, right? Like trading for and extending guys there. None of them making over $22 million a year. And then building a pipeline of young pitching and supplementing that with either trade acquisitions, like Chris Sale, or short-term free agents. Renato Lopez on a 3-year deal, right? Charlie Morton on a couple-year deal and just extending him over and over again until he finally leaves and then ends up retiring, right? And you could argue that plan has worked better than the plans of the Mets and the Phillies. Okay? Because, like, pushing in the chips for a specific season, sure, that can incrementally improve your odds of winning the World Series in that season, but it's not a guarantee. Look at the Mets. The Mets didn't even make the postseason in 2025. And that's coming off of an NLCS season where they then added Juan Soto, one of the best hitters on the planet. Because the strategy for the Mets and the strategy for the Phillies is we are willing to spend big dollars for the game stars on very long deals that clearly take us into decline years for these guys. And some of them are acquired via trade, and we're going to ship out some good prospects. Some of them, because we're spending so much money on these guys, we have to backfill some of these spots with either substandard minor leaguers, because we traded away the best ones, or we have to keep trading away prospects to fill holes because we have not been able to develop a guy because our best prospects were sent via trade, and we don't really have additional money to spend on that position. Right? The Phillies seemingly have not had a good bullpen in years. They're always adding relievers. Orion Kirkgreen, they developed him. There was talk they may not bring him back next year because of what happened late in the year there in the postseason. They traded away some really good prospects for Yohan Duran, like just trying to find somebody with control for that pen. Both the Phillies and the Mets had to trade for a center fielder at the deadline. Harrison Bader worked out for Philly. Cedric Mullins did not work out for New York. But, like, Look at Atlanta going forward. No one on Atlanta's roster, this is per spot track, they break this down by percentages. Nobody on Atlanta's roster will be 10% or more of the pre-CBT payroll, meaning the CBT payroll all the way up to, but not exceeding the first level of the competitive balance tax. No Braves player will hit 10% because no Braves player is making more than $22 million. Contrast that with the Mets. The Mets only have two, but Juan Soto is 20.9% by himself. Francisco Lindor is the other one, if you were curious. We'll see if they bring back Pete Alonso. He's probably a third, right? The Phillies have four guys that are in that 10% or more of the CBT. Zach Wheeler is number one for them, 17.21%. But like Trey Turner is in there. Bryce Harper is in there. Aaron Nola's in there. They're paying him like $25 million a year. Right behind those two guys is they have two dead weight contracts. Total of $38 million for Nick Castellanos and Taijuan Walker. And so because they have all of that money, they have four players together taking up like 45% of the non-CBT payroll. They've had to go with a lot of really cheap backup options, right? They've not really had a good backup catcher behind JT Realmuto. So when he's been hurt, they've had to deal with just crap back there. They haven't really had a good pen. They can't seem to figure out. Edmundo Sosa kind of emerged a little bit as a utility guy. First game he ever started in the outfield, he robbed a home run from Atlanta. But for the most part, like Bryson Stott at second, Alec Boehm at third. There's talk they may move on from Alec Boehm this winter because they're not happy and they want to save a little bit of money. He's projected for like $10 million in arbitration this year. Like they've had holes, right? You look at New York. New York has had a bunch of really expensive contracts and they've not been able to kind of figure out what they're doing. They've got a hole at third base still. Brett Baty, Mark Vientos. They've now figured out second with Marcus Semien, but that's also another huge deal. It created an outfield opening for them by trading away Brandon Nimmo. Does Jeff McNeil maybe fill that? Can they re-sign somebody to play center, or do they have to stick McNeil in center? Kind of a mess. Like their rotation's still a mess. They don't know what they're doing. Atlanta's approach feels more sustainable than Philly's or New York's. Because so much of what Philly and New York do is contingent on those stars. They have to have those stars healthy and performing. If they lose if the Mets lose Juan Soto for half the year, they're probably going to be in trouble. They lose Francisco Lindor for half the year, they're probably in trouble. If the Phillies lose Trey Turner, they might actually get better defensively, but they're probably in trouble. If they lose Bryce Harper for half the year, they're probably in trouble. They lost Zach Wheeler. Aaron Nola struggled. They weren't as dangerous of a rotation. Yes, they had Ranger Suarez. Yes, they had Jesus Luzardo. Yes, they had Christopher Sanchez. Like, they were a good rotation. But with Aaron Nola struggling and Zach Wheeler out for, I think it was the thoracic outlet thing, they were not the same caliber of rotation because the stars weren't there. Atlanta is not as dependent on their stars to carry the team because the floor is a little bit higher. And rather than having 3 or 4 stars that you're counting on to carry your team, you have 6 or 7 players that, at least when you sign them, or your hope was that they were top 5 at their position, right? A healthy Spencer Strider was probably a top 10 starting pitcher in baseball. Chris Sale was a arguably top 5 pitcher. He won the Cy Young, right? Matt Olson was top 5, arguably, at his position at first base this year. Austin Riley from 21 through 23 was a top 5 third baseman in all of the baseball, probably better. A healthy and fully armed and operational Ozzie Albies is one of the best second basemen in baseball, right? None of them on their own are going to carry the Braves. And yes, when you compare to Philly, you compare to New York, Philly's top 2 are probably better than your top 2. New York's top 2 are probably better than your top 2. But Atlanta's top 6 are better than your top 6. And that's the model for the Braves. And so, rather than trying to push all the chips in to optimize your chances in like one specific postseason, the argument here is do what Atlanta's done. Build your roster where you can theoretically, if you don't have exceptionally bad injury luck, get as many bites at the apple as possible, right? You can be good enough to make the postseason every year. And then when you get in the postseason, it's not a complete crapshoot. But like Brian Sidker said, it's a different sport in the postseason than it is in the regular season. So it requires walking a fine line. Because the one thing about all of those deals I just mentioned, whether it's Juan Soto, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, all of those guys, is not only are their annual salaries very, very big, Trey Turner's making $27 million a year. Trey Turner's also signed through age 40. Juan Soto's making $40-something million a year, and he's signed through age 40. Bryce Harper signed through the age of 38. It is very likely that on the back end of those deals, not only will those players be very expensive, but their skills will have diminished enough where for the money you're paying them, they're probably a net negative to your roster. They're probably pulling you down more than they're helping you. Flip side of this, Matt Olson and Austin Riley, last guaranteed years, age 35. Michael Harris's guaranteed money is up after age 29. Sean Murphy's 33. Spencer Strider can hit free agency at 30 if the Braves don't pick up the club options. Atlanta's done a really good job of being above average or plus at a bunch of different positions versus having one of the 2 best players in the league at any position outside of maybe right field, and Ronald Acuna Jr., when he's healthy. Sure, the ceiling's slightly lower, but the floor is higher because what are the odds that all of those players are going to slump at the same time in October? In 2023, they all did. But theoretically, one injury should hurt the Braves less than it hurts Philly or than it hurts New York. And so, like, that's the philosophy here. And what I don't know is how aggressively can you behave inside that philosophy without compromising future years, right? Dylan Cease, 7 years into his late 30s, was never going to happen. Just like Max Fried, 7 years into his late 30s, was never going to happen. The Braves were not going to do that deal. But can you get a dude on a 3-year deal? Right? Can you grab an arm for a 3-year deal and do it without popping a qualifying offer? Can you grab a bat? Cody Bellinger, who Jake Mastriani of Locked On Braves, he and I debated on his show last week about Cody Bellinger, yes or no, and I selfishly think I won that debate. Cody Bellinger is going to take 6 or 7 years. He's going to take $25 to $30 million a year. But can you find a bat that's a 3-year commitment, like you did with Jurickson Profar, a 2-year commitment, something shorter where you are not paying for the decline years. You're paying for the prime years. I think I want the Braves to be more aggressive at spending money in a player's prime. Come off of the Atlanta max of $22 million. I don't want the Braves to all of a sudden start paying for a guy's decline years in his late 30s. But I want the Braves to be more aggressive at making market rate offers, higher AAVs on shorter term deals in a guy's prime. I would rather debate whether or not it's the best move to let this guy walk at age 33 or sign him to an extension versus debating how do we dump this bad contract that has 4 years and $100 million left on it for a 36-year-old player. I don't feel like I'm asking for much. But here's the thing. Whatever you do, if you're Alex Anthopoulos, you've got to fix this. You've got to fix this roster. It took a historic confluence of injuries and underperformance to miss the postseason in 25. That cannot happen again. Because you heard Walt Weiss talk at that press conference when he was first hired about the Braves standard. The Braves standard is competing for the division, being in the postseason, and competing to make and win the World Series. You can't miss October again. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, December 2nd. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, a 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode, a short if news breaks, go live, all that kind of stuff. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.